Alright, so what I'm going to be showing on the wheel today is one of many options for making a plate. So this one isn't the traditional side rimmed. It does have a little bit of a lip on the side. I guess you can call it a rim, but just kind of keeps sauces and things like that in there. Really simple one. It's basically just flattening clay on the wheel. So I'm going to take exactly 3 pounds of clay. So this is precisely 3 pounds of clay. This plate here that I just showed is 9.5 inches wide. And that's what I want to make. So I do have to do some precise measuring, both in thickness of the plate, because I don't want to have to trim off too much. You can leave the bottom of these flat sometimes, but I still trim a foot on them, just for looks, more or less. It's not so that I can glaze the bottom, because I do have a tendency to slump in the kiln. So as usual, just start with basic centering, but I want to center kind of low here. So I'm going to center pretty low. I am still, as usual, going to cone up and cone down, just a kind of wheel wedge. Okay, now that I'm centered, I'm going to center really low. But I'm still holding the side back here with the heel of my hand, a little bit with the fingers just because they're relaxed. So I don't throw rigid like this. Just throw with my hand relaxed. Okay, and the main thing is just keeping control of it as I push down on it so low. Not letting this side get too out of control. Just pushing it, getting it back in the line. I know some of my students in the past have used this little karate chop method. I prefer the thumbs, but some of you may want to use your palm. Just get your hand wet. It does help with flattening, I will admit that. And again with that side, I'm going to push it back up just to get it square again. And now I'm going to open out. I don't really have to open this per se, but this is more or less getting a measurement for the thickness of my plate all the way across. Just little bits of water at a time. And I'm basically just making a flat piece of clay all the way across. I'm going to get a measurement both in thickness of my clay. So I'm going to measure right here where it's thinnest. Right now at about a ½ inch, I'd say. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit lower than that. I want about a ¼ inch. Because with this 3 pounds, I've made a few of these plates. It gets me exactly where I need to go. My bat itself is exactly 12 inches right here. So I'm going to go out I want to go out to 10 inches, and then I'm going to make a lip on the outside. Actually, it's 11 inches. I apologize. Yeah, go out to 11 inches. So about an inch away from my rim here. And I do want to try to stay flat, but you can see that little hump right there. So I'm going to compress here. The wider pieces are, and this is a pretty forgiving stoneware, but the wider pieces are, the more likely they are to get an S crack. If you haven't seen an S crack, it's literally a crack in the shape of an S. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, just compressing. Now I'm going to check my measurements, make sure I'm at 11 inches. Okay, almost there. So now I'm going to use a cheater method. I even have a special tool for this part for when I'm flying and making a lot of plates or making a set of plates. I have a giant rib that I made out of a piece of wood, but I would take this and flatten this out. But for the sake of commonality, I'll use a traditional wooden rib. So I'll take this little pointed edge, put it right in the middle. This is going to give me a little bit more clay pushed out towards the edge. And this is also going to help me compress and make this nice and flat. It's going to get a little slip on it as well, a little bit of clay. So at this point I really haven't even opened my clay in a traditional fashion. I just flattened the clay out, and then I'll make sure that it's nice and centered, especially on the outside edge. If you start with too much clay, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It actually can be kind of forgiving starting with too much clay on a plate like this. And now we're nice and flat. And what I mean by forgiving is if, say it's 11.5 inches, you can take your needle tool and just cut down, measure it again. So I'm a little bit beyond. So I'm going to draw a line right at 11, and I'm just going to cut straight down, right there. That'll give me the precision I'm looking for as far as width goes. And uniformity if you're making a set or a matching set. So that again was a little more clay than I'd like to cut off usually, but I'll recycle that. And now I'm just going to clean up my edge a little bit, and then I'll damage it again. So now I'm just going to take my sponge over the whole thing, just clean up some of those little sharp lines I created with the smooth rib. Just a little bit of pressure. But I'm going to clean up that edge just slightly. Okay, and this is where I'm going to add my little style points, just personal preference. But I take my finger after I've compressed, in and out. Once I get to the center, this time I'm going to add pressure and work my way out like this. And I only go about within an inch of the edge because I don't want that little spiral going that far out. And I'm going to dull that spiral too. Right now it's a little sharp. I don't want food and things like that getting in there. With a little bit of a divot or a little bit of depth for that spiral, it's okay because the glaze tends to fill that in. Now I'm going to take one and just go with the spiral. Okay, now I need that little outside lip. And the way I do that, and this is why this one's so simple, just in the end creation, getting it flat's a different task. But I'll take my modeling tool, blade side, and I just lift by pushing into the side, like so. Then I want to make sure that there's no sharp or like little chunks or anything of clay. I've seen in the past some people will lift this part. I just thin it out a little bit. You could lift this. I want a nice rounded lip on the inside. And I don't want my lip to be too thin or too sharp, because then it has a tendency to chip, not only later on, but also even just in trimming when it's still greenware, still raw. Okay, so now I'm focusing with the sponge on the inside, cleaning that slip off. But I want to focus on the curve of this. I don't want it to be too sharp inside, otherwise things get trapped in there and it just makes it hard to clean. But also, wider pieces, when they dry, they pull up a little bit. So I want to make sure I pull it out just a little bit more than what I want it to end up like. So I'm going to take my middle finger and basically just curve this a little bit out. Okay, and then clean up that edge. My modeling tool. And clean off this little chunk. And there we have a 10-inch plate. Just a little bit, I got a little bit of slip left on the lip, so I'm going to clean that off. nice little throne plate. A lot of different ways. I'll show another video another time with a lifted lip that's folded out so that it has like a little plateau in the middle and then little ridges on the side, or a rim if you will. So that's a throne plate.